Chai and chat with
Yeah.
Sundari and Ranjit. So how exciting
It's
is this?
interesting, Ranjit, that you say Sundari because it's the way it's spelt,
Oh,
but
okay.
because I'm Tamil, Sri Lankan Tamil, it's actually Sundari spelt as it's Sundari. So I
Sundari.
suppose it's Sunt. If you wrote it down as Sunthari, but it's spelt as Ari. But we would
Oh,
pronounce it Sundari. But no one here pronounces it Sundari until I meet somebody who's
yeah.
South Asian or Asian, and they say it, and then I don't know whether to reply to it anymore
Sundari.
because
So is it
it's Sundari.
Sundari?
The,
Okay.
yes, but
So
that would
I'm
sound
gonna.
odd if you calling me that.
Well,
Everybody calls me Sundari or Sundars.
but when I first met you, I think our mutual friend was calling you something totally different.
Yeah,
So-
yes, that's correct. So, and that's the whole thing, isn't it, about
Mm,
names, especially if you've got a name that's not easy to pronounce.
yeah.
And the anglicized version is they'd say Sundari, or they'd go, "Oh, can we call you Sunny, or can we call you?"
Well, this is the thing.
Yes.
I mean, it's interesting, is it? My name, Ranjit, and I've always known it as Ranjit because that's how I said it at school. It's interesting, that's how but at home, it's Ranjit, to India. So family there called me Ranjit. And it's interesting when I tell people, and I used to do a lot of work taking
Mm-hmm.
students to India, to different health centers, hospitals. And in those environments, it was quite strange because everyone's speaking English, but I'd still say Ranjit and then say, you mean
Mm.
Ranjit? Because obviously they speak Hindi and
Yes.
Punjabi. So yes, let's
Yeah.
go with our proper pronunciation. So Sundari and Ranjit. Should we do that?
Okay, that's nice. I like that. That's
Cool.
lovely.
So
So
this is
it's
our chai and chat. I've got my cup of tea here. Have you got yours?
I certainly do have my cup of tea here.
Mine's in a can, a Coca-Cola can today. But people can't tell because we're on a podcast, but I shall have tea in the future. In fact, spill the tea on tea. So,
Yeah, so it's the first thing is what is the word tea?
mm,
Tea is an English word as far as I know. I
mm,
don't understand, don't know the what do you call it, the etymology of tea? Is that what you call it?
yeah, yeah.
No, but it's obviously originally from China, or Indians might say made in India. But
Mm,
in India, well, I suppose in Hindi and Urdu and things, you'd call it chai. Would you say
yeah. Chai, I
that?
mean, Punjabi people call it jar, and there's chai, which is
Ah,
like Hindi, I
mhm.
guess. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, when I was younger, I mean, just to share an experience, I mean, thing of, morning time having a cup of tea, and Asian people drink tea in a certain way. I don't know if you've seen this, you probably
Yes.
have, but often it was in those like glass cups as well. That was the other thing. It's like glass cups with no
Correct.
handles,
Absolutely.
and it would have like a skim on the top of it. And I didn't like
Mm,
tea when I was younger, to be honest. It was like,
mm.
and the noise, if you went round someone's house early in the morning and they serve you tea, it was that slurping of the tea. It wasn't just drinking it quietly, it was that slurp. When you drink tea like that, it tastes so much nicer.
Yes, because you're it's like a straw coming through. You've
Mm.
made that shape with your mouth.
I think
That's
it's
an
like
interesting
wine, isn't it?
story.
Like when people drink wine,
Yeah.
it's like they do
And
that.
they're tasting it,
Yeah.
aren't they? I don't know.
And
It's cultures, it's different ways of enjoying it, isn't it, I
yeah.
guess? Yeah.
And also I found tea very heavy as well. So when I was younger, it was like,
Mm,
and also those flavors, the cardamom and the other spices in
mm,
there. Only later in life now do I love a
mm,
cup of chai, whatever you want to call it.
mm,
Um, with all the spices in it. I love it. But when I was
mm.
younger, I went through a phase of, but young children are like that. They don't like certain flavors. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, I think with my culture, I mean, I grew up in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, but I'm
Mm,
of Sri Lankan Jaffna Tamil descent.
okay.
So, grandmother, we used to call it Tethani, which is tea in
Okay.
Jaffna Tamil. But I come from Malaysia, so Malaysia, the general name for tea is teh. So, but it's all the
Okay.
teas, so it's teh, tea, Tethani. But from a young age, I don't remember us ever drinking milk. It was always tea. And
Okay.
grandmother would make, if I told you it's so unhealthy, but she'd make a big enamel mug. When I say
Mm,
big, it wasn't, we got it a cola, a big one. And tea was made with tea leaves, boiling water, sat and steeped and then drained,
mm.
uh, and then added of condensed milk. That's what we used to have.
Ah,
And then the tea was actually made and left, and we'd all just help ourselves
yeah.
to that tea, to that big mug, and come at any time. And
Mm,
if it was served in a cup, we would, if it was hot, we always used to pour it in a saucer.
Mm.
and blow on it and then lift the saucer and slurp it. So as
Ah,
children, that's how you called your tea. And I remember that. But culturally, it's also very common in Malaysia to have something called teh tarik, which means they pull the tea. It's a way of cooling it down when it's
yeah.
hot, but it also introduces those bubbles. So from a great height,
Oh,
they pour it from one
yes.
cup into another. Tarik means pull, pulled tea,
Mm.
pulled coffee. So tea time, so tea was very sort of different. And my grandparents used to drink tea not just from a glass you'd get in the cafes and the
Mm.
restaurants, but in little metal cups
Oh,
with a little
yes.
spout. And they used to drink water from that as well. So you wouldn't let it touch your mouth. You just pour it into your mouth
Oh,
because it's the cleanliness thing. So that's in our culture of tea was so tea was the morning, tea was the evening, but it was from this. We didn't have a tea caddy or anything like that.
yeah.
A teapot. We just had in a big enamel pot that we all
Mm.
drank tea. So that was always tea to me. And of course, I've changed very much since I've lived here. Now it's
Yeah.
tea. Oh, no sugar, please. And
Mm.
have
And
my.
very,
I still like it strong,
oh,
strong tea
okay.
and milky.
Yeah.
But I do love the what we would call North Indian type of tea with all the
Yeah.
spices and things. Yeah, so different experience of tea, really. Yeah.
Made me think of so many things because I know when we were talking about this podcast, this is our first episode, everyone who's listening. And
Yeah.
it's just today we're talking about tea and chat because that's the title of it. And we did talk about this, but it's given me some more thoughts actually about tea and something you've mentioned, three things you mentioned. So the first one was about the saucer and about pouring tea into a saucer to,
Yeah.
to cool it down. And one of my earliest memories is being in, I think it's infant school with the teacher. She had a teacup and saucer, and she poured some of the tea in her saucer, and then she
Mm.
to cool it down, then poured it back into a cup. And I was just
Oh.
watching that fascination at the, in class, just thinking, that's a very strange thing to do because we would, when people came round, we would give them tea in teacups and saucers, but I never saw anyone do that. And I thought that's a really, really good tip. So in the future, I thought, yes, if I start drinking tea, that's what I'm going to do. At that age, I didn't drink tea. So I must have been about 4 or 5, probably. So it's a
Mm.
very early memory. The other one was about pull tea, as you said, like, pouring tea
Yes, the
from a high.
tarik.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I love tea like that actually. My dad used to
Mm.
do that. So he'd do it
Did
over
he?
this,
Oh,
yeah, he used to do
sweet.
it over the sink, so and you'd get that sort of mixture. I don't know, it just tasted nicer. So the air got
It had
into
all
it,
the
I
bubbles
guess.
on top, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And you see that happening a lot in India, tea stalls. You see them doing that. And when they
Mm.
pour a tea, they're pouring it into these little glass cups, from a distance. Um,
Yes.
and then the other thing you mentioned was metal cups. Now, this is quite a funny one. So when I first went, one of my earliest memories of India when I went was when I was 9. And we turned up
Mm.
in Delhi and I was really tired. And we went round to a relative's house and we went in and I remember just thinking, oh, everything's so different. I didn't prepare myself. I was only 9, so I didn't think how it would be.
Mm.
And anyway, they poured out these cups of tea and they were in these metal cups, and these metal cups were quite big. And my mum
Mm.
said to the person, said, oh, I can't drink all of that. It's too big. It was like a massive mug of tea. But they were laughing. They were saying, no, that it was actually, when you look at the cup, inside it had a separate little chamber. So the mug
Mm.
itself looked big, but it was only tiny inside. So it looked like a fancy mug. And then subsequently we had some, relatives of ours had
Mm.
some. So in their houses you'd have like a cabinet with like, crockery, I guess white people would have.
Yes.
But we had
Yeah.
like Asian things, and every family I knew had those cups, and we used to laugh. We'd be like, I haven't seen them for ages actually. It's made me think about
Oh yes, I know it's sweet, isn't it? And even in our house, we used to a lot of our we had various utensils to drink tea from, as I've explained. In
mm,
little enamel mugs and glasses and all sorts, and nothing pretty.
yeah.
My mum would probably have something very pretty for when her Caucasian friends came or when she was having a little tea party, but it
Mm,
was always best and washed and put away. And we were terrified because we would be terrified we want to break it, really.
mm,
So that was all, as you say, put away in the nice cupboard.
mm,
I suppose people have that here as well. And the other thing I was thinking about tea is that's the only type of tea we had. We had our own brand. We had something called Cameroonian or Bow tea,
okay.
because we grow tea in Malaysia. So
Yeah.
we had our own tea, the Bow Plantations Cameroonian tea, which is lovely. And then I
Yeah.
obviously came to England and I learned about PG tips and
Oh yeah.
Tetley tea in tea bags. We never had tea bags, so that was very exciting because you make it quickly and chuck it out. And then the other thing that people call teas, and really they're infusions, aren't they? Chamomile, peppermint, any combination. I do drink them, but I would never call them tea. But
No,
I
yeah,
do
you're
drink
right.
them. They're not
Yeah.
tasty, but you think it's good for you, so you drink them.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? I mean, one of the things we're going to be talking about in this podcast is health as well. So one of the things we're looking at is sort of health, culture, creativity. So yeah, I think in future podcasts, like you just said, we drink them because we think they're going to be good for us. And you're right, I do the same thing. It's like I do like peppermint tea sometimes if I feel like I've had a heavy meal, so I might have a peppermint tea afterwards. But yeah, you're right. Those other ones, they're infusions, aren't they, more than tea?
It's
And
correct, because I suppose in our culture, well, when I say ours, Ranjina, we have quite separate cultures. We can't throw them all together just because we're, South Asian descent in that sense. But, Amma's grandmother, it means mother, what we called our grandmother mother, Amma. She used to, sometimes when we're not feeling well, ginger infusion or with a bit of mint, but they would never call it tea, you see. It was just a drink, as you say. It's just coming here, it was sold as tea. But yes, lots of health benefits that hope that we will, touch on.
And this is what
in
I'm
future
excited about.
episodes.
I think, when we spoke about this, we have the similarities, but there's lots of differences. And I think, I was interested in when we talked about the title for this, Chai and Chat, and you mentioned you'd call it te.
So I had this combination, don't I? Chai te, chai. Perhaps the listeners might go, oh, we like chai te or te chai.
Yeah. But I think it's that interesting thing of understanding that there are similarities, but there are also differences. And I think, but where some of those similarities and differences, I think for us will probably come out is through our discussions on health and public health and arts as well. And our interests, going back to sort of tea and drinks when we're younger. And it's interesting, isn't it, about the vessels itself, like teacups and things. Like you couldn't imagine like tea out of a china cup tastes so much better than it does in like a chunky mug or a glass. Tea out of those glass little cups, I think is quite strange. Everything. I don't know if it's a psychological thing. It'd be interesting to have a blind taste test. But I think I'd feel the lip. I'd be able to feel the lip.
I think for me, it might be the other way around, because culturally I grew up in a place that we drank it out of glasses and, metal cups, and drinking tea out of a lovely china cup. For me, that would be very tepid tea, like posh Darjeeling or Earl Grey with, with a touch of lemon. That's how I see that. Whereas if I wanted a nice tea, it has to be reminiscent of what Amma used to make or my cousins make. For me, that's a nourishing, makes me feel nice place tea. The other tea is nice, it's refreshing, but it means something different. That's interesting. It's the first time we've shared that, I think. Yes, in that sense, yes.
And I think you're right. I think for me, when I like a proper Punjabi tea, with all the spices in, it's interesting. I like it at certain times. It's when it's comforting because it reminds me of being young. So, and if I've got a cold or something, I like it then. I wouldn't have it necessarily if someone was coming round just for a quick chat. I just have a normal British tea. So just normal with a tea bag and just a bit of milk.
But it's interesting, even that normal British tea, we all make it differently.
Oh, yes.
Yes, because some people just like it one dunk, tea bag out. I like to leave it in a bit, but then it's milky, but it's strong tea, but it's milky.
Yeah.
And lots of people, might not like it, but I've been quite surprised that lots of people say, oh, I like the way you make your tea. And I was going, that's Indian tea, Malaysian Indian tea. And they say, oh, we haven't had it like that, but it's puts hairs on your chest kind of strong tea. So I suppose previously I would never have asked people how they like their tea, but now I do. And that idea of milk in first, or, milk first and then tea, or milk after, we wouldn't have thought about those things. I mean, I can't remember how the Queen would have had it, I don't recall.
She wouldn't make it herself. She had somebody else make it.
No, she wouldn't have made it herself. But I can't remember, the etiquette around tea, because tea was, our, South Asian culture means something different. I mean,
Well,
tea times are different, aren't they? I
yeah.
mean, tea times yeah.
Well, making tea is quite interesting, like you
Mm,
say. I mean, I
mm,
heard that the reason why people put milk in first is because, especially fine bone china, if you pour the hot
right.
water in straight away, it'll break it. So that's why you put the
Okay.
milk in, and then you
Mm,
pour the tea from a teapot that's already been, the tea's been stewed in there.
mm,
Sort of Punjabi or Indian way is, you boil it in a pan, you put your milk, loads of milk, and you boil that, and then
mm.
with your spices.
It's everything. It takes a long time. Nothing's done in a rushed manner.
Mm,
Whereas living here, and I've learned to live in this very rushed manner. Well, we're going to sit down and have lunch at 1 o'clock together, and then
mm,
I was thinking, oh, lunch, what's that? I'll have a few nuts. It's just got
yeah.
used to a way of when I used to be working, well, doing all those. So, I need to tell everybody, my profession. I'm a
Mm.
GP. I do a lot less now. I mainly teach medical students, but those lunch times were just rushed.
Oh,
Eating. There was
yes.
no relax. So you just introduced that to me, and I know it's a little
Mm.
segue into something else, but I'll bring it right back to tea. Um, and you just reminded me, it's an afterthought, but the idea of fine china. I don't spend too much money on buying those things. I love looking for them in
Yeah.
charity shops like Oxfam, and I managed to find this lovely tea set. Obviously, was used in the ones in the vicarage, I hope, but all the gold kind of
Mm.
adornments were still there, and obviously the vicar's wife had probably washed them beautifully. I don't know whether I'm being sexist by
Yeah.
saying it was his wife, but it'd been cared for, and I do use it occasionally. But I always go back to somebody would have made tea in
Mm.
this, and what an experience it was. But
How
yes,
nice. I think,
Oxfam, it's good.
yeah, I think recently I've been thinking more about these things and I think everyone has seen this on social media about, don't
Mm,
keep things for best, use them. And I think back to this conversation about tea has made me realize or remember the cabinet with
mm,
the tea set in there that we never
mm.
used. And actually, my mum had this tea set, which was a glass tea set with
Ah,
teacups and saucers, and it's very fashionable now. So when my dad passed away and my mom came to live with us, she put all her stuff in storage, actually in one of my sister's garages. So we were tidying it up and we saw this tea set and we were sending it to the charity shop. And I went, no, 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 I want it. So again,
mm,
I've got it. It's in the cupboard. But
mm.
when we were children, very occasionally did we drink out of it. We felt very naughty drinking out of these teacups and saucers. But now I thought, I'm going to use it because, you know, don't keep it for best. Just use these things. And like you said, that tea set that you found, um,
Mm.
probably was kept for best. And it's good that you're using it.
Yes.
So, because
Yeah.
every day is our best day. So we might as well, make the
I
most of it.
know that's a good topic for us to perhaps discuss in
Mm,
one of our, that every day, enjoy every day.
yeah.
There's that idea of living in the moment,
Yeah.
yes, another time.
And I think that's
Yes.
something that will come out through this podcast for me.
Yes.
It's that sense of living in the moment, reflecting on
Mm,
things,
mm,
and hopefully whoever's listening to this
mm.
gets something out of it too. As I say, we're looking at sort of health issues because both of us, I mean,
Yeah.
you're a GP, I come from a public
Yes.
health background. We both teach now, so
Mm.
sharing those skills and knowledge, and then also our interest in the arts and I think
Yes.
one of the things will be interesting is looking at arts and how they create a sense of joy and well-being, and
Mm.
also with our cultural aspects as well. I think there's things around that we combine that become lost, and just bringing those back to the fore. So talking about that, because I know this is going to be only a short episode, each week we're going
Yeah.
to look at, so each week we're going to have an episode back 15, 20 minutes so people can, that's enough time to do the dishes so people can listen to us when they're doing the dishes.
Ranjit, I quite like the idea that somebody might be doing their washing up listening to us. That's quite a lovely, honestly, it's a lovely homely feeling. It
Yeah.
is. It's lovely.
And then
Yeah.
we're there with them, helping them get through that washing up. So I was just going to say, one of the things is that, I mean, you're a poet as well. So with a book that's coming
Yeah.
out soon. And I think what I love about poetry, I'm no good at it. So I've been a writer for stage and screen, but I haven't
Mm.
got a clue about poetry. So I'm hoping to learn something from you around this as well. And you've got a poem
Thanks.
that you're going to share. It's but
Yes. Well, first of all, I chose a poem. There were so many poems on tea, but I've chosen a poem because I wanted it to relate to our culture. So it's not particularly a Malaysian culture. It's not. It's. I think this is a poem by a lady called Priti Vangani, and in the poem she talks about the mental image of her young mother mid housework, stealing 5 minutes to sit and in a relaxing squat and having having 5 minutes peace, as they call it. It's quite poignant, and it hit a note because I've lost my mother and my grandmother.
mm,
My grandmother was a real mother figure to me. So it might not be exactly the poem, but those feelings.
cool.
So it's called One Cup of Chai, Preeti Vangani. If I had known that the cup of chai my mother asked me, a drifter in the kitchen, to make her that afternoon, which I, having blended water and milk in such strange ratios that when reduced and strained, the tea came up to barely one trisection of my pinky. That cup was the driest well I saw, the lowest tide. So to cover my blunder, I poured raw water to flood her cup and fled her room before she could collect her body, bring lip to saucer. Had I known that the pale, putrid mess I presented was, after all, the only and last cup of tea I'd ever make her, would I have suddenly been granted the culinary wisdom to brew instead the pot with sprigs of lemongrass, a pod of cardamom, perhaps even a prestigious thread of saffron that I'd sneak from the silver hexagonal box she kept hidden behind the airtight jars of pricey nuts, and bring her a creamy drink of complex caffeine, even make some magnanimous promise of offering her tea on tap till she lived. But knowing me, I know I just continued being the spectacular failure I was that day, shit talking my every inability out of her sight, embarrassed by failure, afraid of consequence. And knowing her, she would have creased her nose at first, then continued to descend on the plate with the hopeful pull of her slurp, stubborn as she was, not willing to peg one finite judgment of adulation or derision on the cup she was served. That's
Lovely.
very poignant. Yeah,
Yeah.
gives me a little shivers reading it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I just
Yes.
like the I mean, this is the thing about poetry. I think it's so layered. There's so many things there that,
Mm,
you and I would get out of this and other people
mm,
as well. But for me, there's the memories there and some of the memories we've talked about so far,
yes.
how individual they are. But and the way she describes it, I think is lovely. So
It is
and
lovely, and I've read it a few times now, and every time I read it, I see a different layer to it,
mm,
and it's brought out all the things that we talked about, slurping
mm,
and the complex manner of making tea. And I
mm,
love that last line because a lot of South Asian women, mothers, this idea they don't sort of, this idea of adulation of your children or
mm.
derision. They just it is,
Yeah.
and that really struck me as well. They're not continuously praising you or telling you off all the time. It's
Mm.
just it's done, and that's it.
And I think
Yeah.
throughout this chat, one of the things that tea reminds me of is stopping. In this busy world that we have,
Yes.
people stop for a
Yes.
cup of tea, they stop for a cuppa, they say, let's have a chat. It's about
Yes.
stopping and about, bringing it back to the health issues, about being mindful.
Mm.
This life is quite busy for people. And I joked about people listening to this while they're doing the dishes, but sometimes that's a
Mm.
time when people stop and they listen,
Mm.
stop and
Mm.
think. Um, and I think tea is one of those moments as well. So I think this has been Interesting. We could go on for hours, but we're almost up
Well,
with our
you and me,
time.
Ranjit, we could.
Yes. So
But,
I think we have to be very strict on ourselves with time. But I think
yes.
again, there's lots of other things we could talk about with tea, but I think it's been nice to finish it with that poem.
No,
So
I've
as our first episode, I think that's
enjoyed
gone
that.
quite well. Hopefully people will listen into our next one. Expect an episode from us every week and on random and diverse topics.
As we say, I'm your Ranjit and I'm Sundari. So, yeah.
Sundari. Brilliant. Excellent, Sundari. It's been lovely chatting to you.